One of the reasons that we are experiencing the appreciation of the cedi is fiscal policy. We admit that it contributes. But we have been reminding this government that much of the impact is due to government of Bank of Ghana direct intervention in the market, which is antithetical to the free liberal market we are operating. When you inject Ghanaian cedi, when you inject dollar into the Ghanaian cedi, it creates a false sense that investors will think that your cedi is doing well. In actual case, it is not doing well. And the IMF has actually come to the country and they have mentioned that the Bank of Ghana must stop. And this house must encourage the Bank of Ghana to stop the measures of intervening and injecting hard currency into the economy. Mr. Speaker, the GDP, what has the government? The government has not paid any loan except those who have so agreed to pay. Government has actually contracted more loan, but debt to GDP is declining. Why? Because of the painful decision of Nana Addo Dankwa government to go for the debt restructuring and to go for the IMF support program. Now they are taking the credit. Today, they are taking the credit and they are telling that their debt to GDP is 54%. But they forgot to tell the House what has accounted for the reduction in the debt to GDP. The government has not done anything about the debt situation. Absolutely nothing. Yet the debt to GDP has moved to 54. He needed to tell this House that it is decreasing because the government painfully took the debt restructuring program. The government painfully went to the IMF for a fund program, and the government has actually been doing that because the government is gaining this momentum because of the intervention of Nana Akufo. Mr. Speaker,
IMF and World Bank are economic enslavers. What they are designed to do is to ensure that we are in a perpetual state of debt. You can never get out of IMF and Bretton Woods institutions generally because they want to ensure that they control your economy, and when they control your economy, they control your politics, and when they control your politics, they control you, and when they control you, they bring in military bases, and when they bring in military bases, they could determine who governs you, because if you don't play ball, they are going to instigate the armies to overthrow you, because in any event, African armies want to be trained in Sandhurst, they still want to be trained in the United States of America, so their world view is still dictated by those foreign powers. What we must do as a continent is to use our institutions for purposes of financing our affairs. The African Development Bank was going to be such an engine, but you now know that it has almost 88 shareholders. The second largest shareholder is the United States of America. Japan has shareholding. The United Kingdom has shareholding. France has shareholding. They have seized and captured and paralyzed African Development Bank. It is only African in name.
IMF, World Bank, all other institutions, they make African countries jump through hoops. Loans will never be able to pay. The US, when they borrow money, they're getting it in 1.5, 1.9 interest rate. Africans, when they get the same amount of money, they're paying 9, 10%. The people who don't need a break, they get a break. The ones who need a break, they don't get a break. The sheer survival of the World Bank, IMF, is based on the fact that African countries and many other developing countries do not succeed. Their success is based on our failure. That has to change. And guess who can make that change? We, the children of Africa.
And I keep repeating, the IMF and the World Bank are banks. Banks operate by giving loans and making profit of the interest of those loans. So they should not threaten us. I mean, a bank should not be threatening the customer and saying, I won't give you a loan if you don't do what I want. If I don't come to you for a loan, you don't turn a profit. And so our economies are what run those multinational banks. And until we begin to assert ourselves and begin to trade more amongst ourselves, Ghana should begin to buy more rice from Nigeria, and Nigeria should begin to buy more salt from Ghana. We don't need to be going to the West for this. That's our problem as Africa.
You didn't have to brag that you have a solid economic management team. And yet within 5 months, you have been able to bring the dollar down from its knees from 17 cedis down to 10 cedis. And yet you brought down the price of fuel to a certain level where every Ghanaian is happy, to the point where you have instituted 15% reduction in transport fares.
So that about captures the general sentiment in Ghana right now. Yes, Ghanaians are very happy. Just a year ago, Ghana's economy was in the ICU. The city had lost over 50% of its value. Inflation was running wild, and investor confidence had evaporated. Ghana was defaulting on debt, turning to the IMF for a $3 billion bailout, and scraping together reserves just to keep the lights on. So what changed? Well, here are the key moves behind the comeback. Number one, massive forex injection. The Bank of Ghana pumped $490 million into the market in April 2025 alone. That's the highest monthly intervention since 2022. Why does that matter? Well, more dollars in the system calms panic, boosts supply, and gives the city some breathing room. And secondly, the gold for oil and gold bond strategy. So here's what you need to know. In 2022, under then President Nana Akufo-Addo, Ghana launched an aggressive program to pay for oil using gold instead of dollars. So it was the beginning of the idea of nationalization of our natural resources. But then President John Mahama, who just took office in January, is trying to take things a step further. He established Goldbod, a new state-run gold aggregator to manage the nation's gold. Goldbod, which sits directly under the Ministry of Finance, is the sole authority with exclusive right to buy, sell, weigh, value, and export gold and other precious minerals in Ghana. 3, debt repayment suspension. Ghana has also restructured most of its debt, the biggest one being the $3 billion IMF loan. It has suspended most of its debt payments for a while, keeping hard currency inside the country. It's controversial, sure, but it gives the economy fiscal space to stabilize. And number 4, tight monetary policy. The central bank held interest rates steady at a high 28%, even as inflation cooled. That high rate discouraged capital flight and helped restore faith in the city. And number 5, strong remittance inflows. The diaspora remittances are also playing a silent but powerful role here. With steady inflows of foreign currency from Ghanaians abroad, the pressure on the city erased even further. So when you combine all of that, you get what we're seeing now. A rare moment of economic stability. These moves are backed by the IMF's program, yes. But Ghana isn't just sitting back and letting the IMF write the rules. It's trying to assert its own.
Back to Gistline. As we all know, there's something big that is going on, and Ghanaians are beginning to see it for what it truly is. The International Monetary Fund, which is the IMF, and the World Bank, which are two powerful global institutions, they are tightening their grip on Ghana under the pretense of helping with loans and economic advice. But if you look closely, it's clear these people are not just helping, they are controlling. Ghana, which is a proud nation with rich resources and vibrant people, is being caught in a trap that too many African countries know too well, which is the debt trap. While the IMF has released over $2.3 billion under the so-called support system, or the support program, it comes with heavy strings attached. They dictate budget policies, they control spending priorities, and push austerity measures, which hits ordinary citizens the hardest. Now, these same institutions are the reason fuel prices, utility tariffs, and taxes keep rising, because Ghana must meet these strict performance targets to unlock more funds. And let's not forget, the IMF and World Bank, they have a hand in Ghana's affairs. From agriculture to energy, they are involved in almost every sector. But who do you think is really benefiting? Because projects are financed, yes, but control shifts away from local institutions and into the hands of foreign technocrats and consultants. This is modern day economic colonization for me. But this is where we should stand. I feel Ghana deserves better. And the truth is, Ghana has what it takes to chart its own path. We have gold, oil, cocoa, lithium, and most importantly, youthful energy and talent. What Ghana needs is true economic freedom, not constant dependence on global lenders whose policies are designed to keep us begging for more. Now, we must support local industries, reform taxation fairly, and invest in productive sectors, not just meet conditions from Washington or Paris. And we must boldly say, enough is enough to policies that prioritize creditor comfort over citizen welfare. Now it's time for the youth, the leaders, and the media, even civil society, to rally behind the vision of Ghana that is independent, self-sustaining, and economically sovereign. Let the IMF and World Bank know that Ghana is not for sale. Well, let me know what you think in the comment section. But before then, I'm going to be playing some clips for you. Please kindly like, share, and subscribe.
The same people who have the audacity to tell us that we are poor countries. They are taking trillions out of Africa every year. And what is the African doing? Like an obedient, programmed black man, we just give in. We know the facts, but we just do nothing about it.
So IMF is going after Ghana. They are accusing Ghana of manipulating its own currency. So IMF is saying that Ghana Bank is injecting money directly to the market, which is making Ghana currency steady to improve. And this is not good at all. IMF is saying that there is footprints all over the market of Ghana Bank. They even went to Ghana to warn them to stop manipulating the market, and they should let the market decide if Ghana is strong, or to decide the state of Ghana currency, that is SEDI. And also some government officials, though, are saying that this is true. What IMF is saying is true at all. They are saying that Ghana Bank injects money, a lot of money in the market, which is making a lot of people think that Ghana currency SEDI is doing so good, but in real sense, this is not true at all. This is just changing the economy, making things worse, and also it's not good for Ghana economy. This is according to one of the government officials, Ghana government official. But we all know that Ghana currency has been doing so great. It has surpassed even US dollar. This 2025, the Ghana currency is the most developing currency in 2025.
But whether there's pressure on me to restore licenses, no, not at all. Remember, the resolution framework is working. I came into office to find that a lot of progress have been made. Some cases are in court. Some cases are, undergoing certain forms of settlement. And so the process is on, and we'll follow on with the process in that regard. The issue of what to do, it depends. For example, if a court reaches a decision and instructs us to go in a particular way, the board of Bank of Ghana will look at that. But from where I sit at the moment, there's no pressure on me to restore any such license unilaterally. I have to add that. No pressure on me to restore anything unilaterally.
With respect to the budget, here I can say that the IMF has welcomed the government's corrective actions, including a strong 2025 budget and an audit of payables to quantify and address the pre-election fiscal slippages. The authorities have recently implemented changes to their public financial management and public procurement acts, and this helps improve the overall fiscal responsibility framework in Ghana. And the authorities have also adopted a strategy to address issues in the energy sector. I can add that the mid-year budget review is fully in line with parameters and objectives of the IMF supported program. And with respect to the question on monetary policy, what I can say is that Ghana has made good progress since the beginning of the program in reducing inflation. Inflation was extremely high at the end of 2022 at 54%. It has now come down substantially to 14% at end June 2025. Going forward, it will be important for monetary policy to remain sufficiently tight, consistent with bringing inflation down to the Bank of Ghana's target range, which is 8% plus or minus 2 percentage points.
So we've seen the IMF's, statement after they approved some $367 million for Ghana. They're talking about how the Bank of Ghana should reduce its interventions in the forex market. First of all, help us understand what's wrong with the Bank of Ghana interfering in the forex market. After all, we have always said that, Bank of Ghana's work that it does is aimed at is inflation targeting. Everything it does seeks to reduce inflation when it comes to monetary policy rate. So if we say we have, imported inflation, shouldn't they be working on the exchange rates, Professor Bokpin?
All right, thank you very much. To a large extent, your proposition sits quite well. But on a broader scale and for more sustainability, one would associate more with the IMF. And I'll give you a couple of reasons.
Please do.
one of the important functions of the market is what we call price discovery. So, and that comes about when you allow forces of demand and supply from demand side, from supply side to arrive at a price that will be reflective of what the true dynamics of the market is, if we are talking about the price. But where you have a situation where, as it currently stands, the central bank, being a regulator, is also a dominant player in the market. So Bank of Ghana has, to a large extent, upper hand in terms of control of FX and how that FX is spilled over onto the market. So to that extent, the price signaling effect will come more from the central bank rather than the market playing its discovery role. And that is what we are seeing here. Now, when you have that situation, Bank of Ghana may have their reason. It may benefit us temporarily and all of that. But when you have that situation, market participants may have the impression that the true rate is not really the official rate, which is influenced to a large extent by the central bank. They wouldn't want to transact to that particular rate. Now, if you look at what is happening right now, if you pick the rate at the bank level, if you want to sell USD dollars at the bank level, you are likely to get it at maybe probably 10.1 or so. Some are even doing 9.8 or so. However, if you look at the other layers of the market, the Forex Bureau, I don't want to even talk about the black market now, but I will eventually end there. If you look at the Forex Bureau, the price differential is working up to almost 20%. In some instances, the data we looked at, we're looking at close to 25%. Now, if you compare that to black market, you are getting close to 35%. So what that means is that you are operating a system where there are multiple rates. So you then have the official rate sitting with the banks or with Bank of Ghana, but the transaction rate will be outside the corridor, right? And when you do that consistently, you are actually fueling the development of the black market rather than roping in the transactions within the official or the formal financial system. So we have to look at the multiple entries of FX into the market. Okay. If you compare the multiple entries in terms of supply of FX into the market, and you compare that to the intervention of the central bank, the weight of the intervention is more on the side of the central bank rather than the trickling in from the forces of demand and supply, which should settle the equilibrium or the real exchange rates. Beyond that broader issue, the other thing to even look at is that, and I believe that the central bank is working at that. At one hand, one is likely to have a soft side from the central bank because of where we have come from, especially when the CD had suffered a run consistently in the last couple of years. When the crisis peaked in 2022, the CD suffered a run. It lost more than 50% of its trading value, and all of that.
National forces and international forces that affect their lives. Amongst the international forces, you find that there are bodies like the International Monetary Fund, which really impose themselves on our governments. For instance, they have asked in Zimbabwe that our present government should reduce food subsidies. It should do away with public spending, which means it should cut down on education and health. It should also devalue the currency. It should also freeze the wages of the workers. And it is exactly these things that the government is trying to raise. Recently, they have raised the minimum wage of workers, up to something like 143 Zimbabwean dollars for the workers. And Ever since the independence of Zimbabwe, if there is anything that the government has done for the people for now, it is bringing health facilities, bringing educational facilities, that is building schools, preschool facilities in the rural areas in particular, because most of Zimbabwe is rural and the population there is more than 80%. So that, in other words, the IMF is saying to Zimbabwean government, do not do anything good for your people. So would we not say that that is a form of aid that we really are rejecting, you know, so that these loans, when they are given by the IMF and the World Bank, they are not to support the livelihood of our people, and especially the poorer classes, that is the peasants and the workers. But in fact, they are dominating over and above our governments. So we find our governments, even when they try a lot to improve the situation for the people, it is difficult. So we as researchers, we bring this kind of knowledge to our pastors, we bring this kind of knowledge to our women and youth so that they understand how the world functions and how it affects our situation.
Weaker. True. Kwame Nkrumah foresaw this and spoke about it. Kwame Nkrumah told us that, look, it was not sufficient to say that we have sacked the white man from our soil, and that they will come back, either in their multinational or bilateral forms, and that they will even become more dangerous than when they were present with us. The IMF and World Bank were not formed to solve African problems. They were formed to solve the European problems after the World War. Right?
That's true.
So if those institutions were formed, why is it that they are not the solution to Europe and America any longer? And it has to take developing countries to be the ones to be going to the IMF and World Bank. So Kwame Nkrumah saw this and told us, we refuse to listen.
Why?
Well, some people wanted to become rich. You are not aware of the Afrifers, the Harleys, and the Kotokas who became rich, taking over $30 million so that they can ensure that Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. They took money at the expense of all of us and kaput the African agenda. And so this is where we are. And the major problem of Kwame Nkrumah was not the expansionist or the interventionist projects that he was putting for Ghana and Africa, but the enlightenment that he was giving to the continent of Africa. Unfortunately, today, how many people will be in the position to enlighten Africa? And the few that you wanted to identify within the continent of Africa as Pan-Africanists cannot win political office. I heard him speak so passionately about Professor PLO Lumumba.
Right.
PLO Lumumba cannot win an election in Kenya.
Why?
Because the forces external will come at him, because they know that when he wins, the narrative will change. It will be an African narration. And so the forces external to the continent will come at him, and then they will marshal and ensure that he doesn't get resources or he is stifled in a manner that some people will be supported to win.
They pay money for apprenticeship. Yes, after training them, where would they go? They must have jobs to do, and that is why you need the private sector to be working. So,
but the previous administration, you heard Dr. Zato made the point. I know you were listening.
Yes.
The previous administration laid the foundation for what is being experienced now. The gains that you talk about in the economy in the last 6 months is as a result of the foundation laid by.
Maybe Zato was talking about the Cosmocayan economy. But if it was the Ghanaian economy, an economy that we gave women, our parents, haircut, what was the foundation about it? If the economy was doing well, why would we give our mothers and fathers haircut? To the extent that we were told by Dr. Michael Ejekum that 800 of his colleagues died because of that policy. That wasn't the leader. Nursing allowances were not being paid. Teacher allowances were not being paid. We had a lot of arrears. You heard the president, the finance minister, tell the entire country that they have paid a lot of arrears. If there was that solid foundation, I'm sure there wouldn't be any arrears. The finance minister then just messed us up and left us to live in the US. So I do not want to agree, and I will never agree, and I stand to debate anybody who want to convince me that the actual administration did anything that was good. I have heard them say that because of the debt restructuring. When you took over the reins of government, were we in debt restructuring position? You took us there just like sending us into an inflation of 54% and bringing us back to 23% and telling me that you did what?
What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America is never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in U.S. dollars. Africa has to earn the U.S. dollars, and the only way it can earn the U.S. dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for